Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Invisible Condition. It's not all in your head. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, and we want everybody to know, everybody with an invisible condition, to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you do have a voice, you have a community, and you are not alone. Very important. And I am very excited to introduce to you our guest for this morning. Her name is Shelby Long, and I'm telling you, I met her a while back, and I'm so glad that we stayed in touch and we were able to get we were able to do this show with her because she's amazing. And she took her life took a very drastic turn after a crazy car accident that left her in a coma for over 2 weeks, 16 days. She was in this coma and suffered a traumatic brain injury. Uh, she was in rehab most of the summer between her junior and senior year of high school. But during that time, she relearned how to walk, how to write, how to swallow, all the thing, all this crazy stuff that we do all the day, every day, all day. Don't even think about, take for granted. She had to relearn all this stuff. Fast forward to more recently, Shelby is now an author, amazing speaker, incredibly successful businesswoman. I'm so honored to have her here. This is going to be great. Let me push the right button and she will be joining us. Good morning, Shelby. Hello.
Good morning. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Goodness. Yes, you are. This is so cool. I'm so glad that we finally got this lined up and got this figured out. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So walk us through I know well, never mind. Just walk us through the first immediate, time, like that time that threw everything off, the accident and the aftermath and everything. Just start at the beginning.
Yeah. A little background. I grew up in a small town in central Idaho, about 3,000 people. I grew up on a farm outside of that town. So I was on gravel roads way outside of town. And so it was like about a 10-minute drive every time I wanted to go anywhere to go into town. And it was the end of my junior year of high school. You've already previewed some of this. And end of my junior year, we were having an award ceremony for the seniors that were graduating. And I was driving into town and I was hit. My little truck that I was driving, I was on a gravel road. It had rained that day, didn't see anything. And I was hit right behind the driver's side door and my truck was thrown off the road and I was thrown into a coma. And I don't remember any of this. So I have no recollection of the wreck. I have no recollection of the actions immediately following the wreck. It created an amnesia where I forgot the month before the accident. And then I don't really remember the coma or waking up, but it's definitely transitioned lots of things in my life. That happened in the end. So that happened it was 30 years ago. This May is when that happened, which is kind of a
Wow.
crazy thing to think about. And I wrote about it when I wrote my book 3 years ago now, because I released my book 2 years ago. And that was one of the first, like, I talked about it, but really as not flippantly, but like, oh, well, this happened to me, but I'd never really understood what an impact it could have for others that
Yeah.
maybe experienced something. So about 3 years ago, I recreated that and wrote about that in the book, and that was when I started to really discover more of the emotions that happened around that. So I was in the wreck. I got in the wreck. I was in the coma for 16 days, and I woke up. And then after that, I was in the rehab center for 4.5 weeks, and then very, very fortunately, I was able to relearn and regain my functions. And I had, as far as the traumatic brain injury is a big deal, but I was also very fortunate that I didn't have very many other physical injuries, which is a blessing in disguise. My pelvis was broken in 3 places, but I had no other abrasions. My head didn't hit anything, but when I was in the car wreck, I was, your brain hits your skull, and it was
Yeah.
bruised. So
Yeah.
that's what created the coma. And I think I was very fortunate that I didn't cut anything or hit anything else. But during the time in the coma, my pelvis healed, but my bruised my right side of my brain, so my left side was paralyzed. And I very fortunately, again, I was able to regain that function and strength. It took time and it took rehabilitation, but I did. And then I got out of the hospital 4 weeks after that, went home to the farm and prepared to go to school. And I went to school my senior year, and I went back to all of the things that I did before I got in the car wreck. I was on the debate team. I was senior class president. I was a 4.0 student. And so I was going into calculus and AP English and, continuing all those things. And I went back into those things, and I still could do them. I don't think I could do them at the capacity I did before, but I think going back into that and not allowing myself to be the victim of my injury, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
I feel that was a significant piece of my recovery. And I went back I was school my senior year. I graduated salutatorian, and then I went to college that following fall. So that's kind of the very tight knit piece of the story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other details in there, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's kind of the story. But that's again, I remember very little about being in the hospital, but I do remember feeling very fortunate because I felt that I had something that I could actually recover from, and I didn't
Yeah.
have any abrasions. So that was kind of the big thing about that. So
Yeah, no, that's huge because that could have been a lot worse.
it could have
And
been a lot worse.
it could have been so much worse.
A coma is bad, but it could have been
Yeah.
a lot worse. So.
Yeah. Well, and you said something interesting when you talked about the coma. You said I think heard you say you created a coma. You created the coma for like so that is that did you mean to use that word in particular?
No,
Oh, okay.
I did not. But
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was like
I do think being in the coma allowed me to heal. So
yeah.
I was in the coma for 16 days. I was in intensive care for the first 7 days of that. And then
Yeah.
they took me off the life support and whatever. And then breathing on my own, doing all the things. And then it was semi-conscious after that. And then and my mom describes it that as I appeared very agitated, and I didn't want to be in the bed, but I would rip things and take tubes out and whatever. I was very agitated. But then like toward the time that I woke up from the coma, I would start to respond to the nurse. Like the nurse would ask me to squeeze her finger, and I would.
Yeah.
I told this story on Zach's interview last week, but
Yeah.
but I think it's a great story to tell.
Yeah.
You know, you're in a coma and nobody knew what would be the outcome. Like if I would wake up and what I would be like if I did wake up.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and my parents were prepared for that because I don't think they were really prepared for it, but the doctors were preparing them for that. Like, we don't know if she's going to be able to talk. We don't
Yeah.
know if she's going to be able to move. Like, they
Right.
had visions of taking care of me for the rest of my life
Yeah.
because they just had no idea. But it was day 16 and I had really they thought that I was going to be conscious, or they thought that I might wake up. And so my brother and my dad and mom were there in the room. And I don't remember this, of course, but I just hear the story, but it's a great
Sure.
story. But my brother was on the other side. My brother's 2 years younger than me. He was on the other side of the room throwing this like stress ball that somebody had given my mom. He was throwing it against the wall, facing across the room.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said, I like snapped into consciousness and I said, "Sean, you're really starting to piss me off." I said that, and their laughter and tears kind of filled the room, and
Yeah.
it was a good sign because I said something that made sense, and
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
my brother and I are very close to this day, but you know, he's the younger brother, so
yeah, so you can push him around a little bit like that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. No, and it's funny because that would be, that would be something totally just, yeah. Oh, yeah. You've probably said it a few times in the past. Maybe that's where it came out,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. That had to have been a shock, though. Yeah. That was, woo. Oh, man. So you mentioned, you've talked about, like, when I've heard you before, you talked about amnesia being a gift. And I think in
Yeah.
so many ways, you're absolutely right. Like, if you had been awake during all of that, that recovery probably would have taken, I mean, I don't even know how much longer it would have taken, but having your body in that rested state, well, rested, I guess that's the word for it.
Yeah.
It gave your body so much more available energy to focus on healing and stuff. And so that's
I
great.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think the coma was a gift, but I think it was kind of because I had the chance to heal and the chance to.
Or the amnesia was a gift. I'm sorry. That's what I
Yeah.
meant to say. Did I say coma? I said it. I should have said
No,
amnesia.
you said amnesia.
Oh,
You did
okay.
say
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
then there's also that, like, I don't remember it. I don't, and I think it was a gift too because I don't remember the wreck. I think
Yeah.
having the wreck, yes, it's trauma, and being in a coma is trauma. But because I don't remember the wreck, and I don't remember very much of the hospital. I remember some things in the hospital. I don't remember very much, but because
Yeah.
I don't remember that, I think it's a gift because I don't remember the trauma. And
Yeah.
my parents who lived through it, they saw me with, I had
Yeah.
my mom, I remember this story very specifically, and I'm a parent now too. And so I can't even imagine
Yeah.
being in this position, but that I was laying in bed, I had no abrasions on me. I didn't look injured. I just looked like I was sleeping, but I did have, they put a probe into my brain to measure the pressure of between
Yeah.
the brain and the skull. And,
Huh?
That looked kind of weird, I'm sure, but she's like, I didn't have any bruises. I
Yeah.
had my whole chest was bruised and across my lap because from the seatbelt. But I think the amnesia and not remembering the trauma is a big deal. I also think it's the other way that I think it was a gift is that, before I got in the wreck, I was a pretty successful high school student. Like was a 4.0 student. I just returned from the state debate tournament. I was elected to go to Girls State. So there was like all of these, I was elected senior class president. And the joke about it is, like, I don't remember being elected senior class president, but when my best friend told me I was elected, I was like, no, I'm not. Why would I do that? That's a lot of work. And I have to do senior class. So I have to do reunions for the next however many years. So it's like remembering those things but I do think it was a gift the reason I think it's a gift is because I was who I was before the wreck, and I don't remember any of that trauma. So like, of course I'm going to be on the debate team. Of course I'm going to go into calculus. Like that's what I'm going to go to college in, the following year. I need to get ready for that. And so I think that's because I don't remember the trauma. I think I think that's something that's very helpful in the
Very
recovery
helpful.
because
Hugely.
I like
Yeah.
knew where I wanted to go before the wreck, and then the wreck happened, and there was no question in my mind that I was going to do that either. So,
Well, and the other thing that strikes me is your parents didn't you didn't remember it, and they did, and they did not. They weren't like, oh no, don't do that. This happened and this happened, this happened, and describe it all to you, and they just kept that, right? I mean, it sounds
well,
like they just.
they were my dad and my mom. My mom was with me the whole time when I was in the, she was by my side every day. My dad had to take care of the farm. I grew up on a ranch.
Sure.
So he was home with my brother because he had to finish school. But my dad, I'm sure that there was questions in their mind about how I would be like, and because that's what the doctors prepare you for. We don't know if she's going to be able to walk. We don't know if she's going to be able to go back to school in the fall. We don't, because there's so many unknowns.
Sure.
But when I got out of the rehab center and I started to kind of come back into consciousness, but then I started doing things again and relearning things. Like I had to relearn how to walk. And I did a lot of my therapy in the pool because there's no gravity.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, there is gravity, but there's less pressure. And so I did a lot of that in the pool. But I mean, there's a chapter in my book, I talk about it, that I remember distinctly when I was in the wheelchair and when I stood up and walked down the hallway without holding on to anything and without a walker. And I took my first steps at 17. I remember that very distinctly. Yeah. And my parents remember that too. My dad, I remember we went to, and this sticks out in my mind. This is such a memory of mine, and also something that speaks to my dad's demeanor. Dad's an old farmer, great speaker, local influencer. Nice. He was amazing. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I remember we're sitting in a meeting with the principal and a couple of my teachers before school my senior year, and there was a discussion about, she might want to reduce schedule, and let's talk about how we can get her into that and all that. My dad was
very understandable.
Yeah. I mean, I had suffered a pretty traumatic injury. But my dad was like, hell no, we're not going to do that. She's going back to school. She's going to go to college next year. Like, he set that expectation that, like, no, we're going to challenge her because she's not going to develop. She's not going to get better unless we challenge her. And that's nice. That also, I think, was an expectation that, I was 17. So, I don't have teenagers yet, but I'm getting pretty close. And I know how resilient they are. But having those expectations that are set, that the expectations there, I think, make a big difference. And so I just challenged myself to be able to do all those things again. So
I love that.
That was a extremely important thing that surrounded me after, and a very supportive environment after the wreck happened. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, a couple things stick out to me from what you said. And one is that the doctors, very important that they said, we don't know if fill in the blank. We don't know if she's going to walk in. We don't know what kind of things. They didn't say, some I wouldn't be here if it weren't for good surgeons too. So we're not throwing we're not throwing doctors under the bus, anybody. Right. Don't worry. We love doctors. But, some might have said, she probably won't do this. She probably is not going to be able to do this. Or, it could have been framed more negatively. They framed it, whether they even consciously knew it or not, they were framing it in a very positive light. We don't know if this is going to be a thing. And so I think that helped your mom and ultimately you probably to, and your dad sounds like he was just out of left field, like, nope, she's gonna do this. But
It's gonna be fine.
I
Yeah,
think to
it was.
prepare you and your mom, I think that was even if they didn't even know that that's what they were doing, that was really cool. And then the other thing is, when kids are little, when kids are small and they're walking or whatever, and they fall, they almost instantly they always look at mom and dad first before they
Mhm.
cry or they don't cry, right? It's like, does she think it's a big deal or not?
Right.
And if she doesn't think it's a big deal, you just walk over and go, all right, man, nice landing. Let's go. Carry on.
Yeah. It's all
Or,
about your reaction.
yeah, exactly. And I think that was huge. I think that applies here too, because it was your dad just completely snapped you into back into
Mhm.
that mindset that you had from before, of I'm just, yeah, this is normal. I'm gonna do it.
Yep.
I mean, that could
And
have gone a different way too.
oh,
So,
absolutely. And it's
so
not, not scientific at all, but I mean, I'm sure there's some science behind it, but in my experience, the mindset has a lot to do with it. And if you have
oh yeah.
and if you think it will happen, and
Yeah.
again, I was so fortunate that there wasn't any more major things that happened during during the wreck and in the recovery. And I was
Oh yeah,
so very
for sure.
fortunate, but I I really do think that had a big influence on me too, is that like you're going to be fine.
Yeah,
Dust
exactly.
it off. And as a parent, I think of that too. It's like if you react like, oh, if you react like you need to have bubble wrap around your kids, and your kids aren't going to, you know,
Yeah.
develop that resilience. And I think there's a piece of that too, I mean, and this is maybe kind of left field, but like even in the workplace nowadays, or I've been a college professor for 18 years, and
Oh yeah.
there's a resilience factor that I think is maybe not there with, and particularly after COVID and everybody's kind of scared. And so I
Yeah.
get that, but I was not raised with that. I was raised in you're independent, you're gonna be fine, and
Yeah.
you can do this. And that even that small expectation, I think, had a tremendous impact
I totally
on
agree.
my feeling about recovery. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we have that in common with my parents. Your parents were a lot like my parents. They never once said, you're sick, you need to do this
right,
different or that different, or you need to whatever, fill in the blank of anything, that I wanted to do. It was like if I wanted to do something that might be harmful because of, what was going on with surgeries and everything, they wouldn't say, no, you can't. They'd say, how about this? You know,
right.
how about we go this direction instead? And so yeah, I am so thankful for that in my growing up years as well, because it's true. It's a mindset now that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, we can do that.
Yep.
Your go-to now is, yeah, let's do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least you're willing to try it instead of shy away from stuff. So
I think
and
that's one thing I discovered too in the journey of entrepreneurship, because not everything works. And
yeah,
so
nope.
you're like, well, that's not gonna work. Let's try something else. And it's
Mhm.
like there's kind of the mindset piece of, yes, like I am who I was before, but now I think it's more important is like you're gonna be fine. Just dust it off and talk to somebody else. And yeah, they did that client didn't work out. It's okay. Just move on to the next one. Like
Right.
there's that piece in there of it's the resilience factor that is
It
built in.
is.
And it's like you're gonna be fine. You just gotta, you know dust off and move on. And
Yeah.
I think that's another piece of the mindset too, that is not something that intentionally happened, but in hindsight, when you look at the challenges that you've been through or whatever, then that's
Mhm.
something that got you through. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
pretty.
you almost don't even realize it at the time, but you look,
Absolutely.
right. It's always hindsight. You go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they said that instead of that,
Mhm.
because it
Yeah.
totally could have changed the whole trajectory of everything. So, yeah. So kudos to your parents, by the way. Well
Oh my
done.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my
They
God.
just it was and again, I'm a parent now. I have 2 kids, and I can't
Mm.
imagine going through something like that.
Yeah.
But you do, right?
I mean, what are you gonna do? Not
What are you
go
gonna
through,
do? Not do it?
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, that's not even fathomable, just like,
yeah,
well, okay, whatever,
yeah.
Of course you're gonna fight for your child,
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
they wanted me to and 2, they wanted me to achieve what I set out to do,
yeah, yeah,
and there was and giving me the confidence to and, you need to have the confidence yourself,
of
but
course.
other people having the confidence in you to be able to do that, that just having that around you totally affects your whole
Hugely
approach,
reinforcing.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I you've got your QR code on here
Yeah.
for the last part of the before we go to a break in about a minute here, but everybody, okay, this is if you're not okay, everybody watching, if you're not like jaw's not on the floor right now, it should be, and you should be picking it up about now, and because that is a lot, and
A lot.
if you have any questions about anything that Shelby just talked about, if there's brain injuries in your that's happened in your family or anything along that line, um that you have questions about, reach out. That's what
Please.
she's, I mean, really. And so that QR code will bring you to a website, which is very easy to contact you, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, but I think, right. So we've got the story, we've got oh my gosh, this is what happened. This is kind of how, you made the best of it and now you're out of it. Mostly. You're never
Yeah.
really out of a brain injury completely.
No,
But
and that's the part too. It's like I I worked so hard to be the person before I got the head injury, but
yeah,
it totally transforms who you are.
it
And
does.
and I wouldn't be who I was without it. So,
Well, we wouldn't be talking if you hadn't had it. I mean, you wouldn't be there. That's the crazy thing. I mean, I look back in the last 10 years of my life too, with all the things that I didn't expect that would happen that had happened.
yeah.
And I wouldn't be sitting here doing this if some of those seemingly terrible, traumatic, crazy things had happened.
Yeah.
It's just, that's how it works sometimes.
How it works.
It's, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's just how it is. You're resilient because of the bad things the crazy things. I don't
Absolutely.
even want to call it bad things because you wouldn't be here without it. So,
Right.
uh, but yeah. Well, okay. So thank you. Well, let's go to a break just for a couple of minutes here. And on the other side of that break, we're going to talk about everything that you've been doing since and
Sense.
leading up to now. And we want to talk about your book, and we're going to talk about what you're doing. And it's amazing. It's an awesome wrap up to the story. So we're going to do that after just a couple minutes here. Don't go anywhere. Stay where you are. We will be right back in a couple of minutes. See you soon.
Does your to-do list have you feeling stressed? Does your list include tasks like responding to email and phone calls, collecting forms and paperwork, and sending quotes and invoices? Have you been neglecting posting updates to your social media accounts, email newsletters, or content on your website? Maybe you need help to get digitally organized. I'm Selena, one of the owners at Office Mercenary, and we're a US-based virtual assistant agency. We can take care of all of these tasks and more so you can get back to focusing on the things you love about your business. Our team is happy to work with you and your individual needs. So schedule a call with us, bring your to-do list, and stop doing the tedious tasks.
In a world where office workers typically receive 130 daily emails and have an 8-second attention span, CoreCentrica, with her 4 decades of international marketing experience, has partnered with the Learning Code Institute and their 30 years of neuroscientific research. Together, we are crafting unique messaging strategies that resonate, connect, and ultimately convert our target audiences. CoreCentrica, where award-winning creativity and disruptive neuroscience come together. Scan this code now or call and click And let us show you how Core Centrica's partnership with the Learning Code Institute is influencing how businesses connect with their audience, foster engagement, and achieve conversions.
Hi, this is Clara Capano, your host for Women Winning Their Way, where we talk about how you can create success all on your terms. Join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Limelight Network here on E360 TV.
Right. Welcome back, everybody. And thank you again, Shelby, for being here and doing this. This is a great story. And I'm so glad that people are getting to hear it because it's really cool. And this is not the first time I've heard it, and it gets better every time. So I think this is like at least the second, maybe the third time I've heard it. And it's like,
there's so many details. It's hard to get into. You need an interview like this to be able to really get into the story. So.
Well, and it feels like every time you tell it, like there's certain stories I tell over and over and over too. Everybody's like, oh, what about this? What happened there? And it feels like you remember. It's almost like you remember something different every time. Sometimes,
right.
It's like, oh yeah, that's right. And then this happened, So it's really cool. It's really good to hear all that again and again because it reinforces it. It's so cool. So something reminded me of something you said in the first segment about the being on the debate team and doing all the things. Like, how did that? You said it helped you with your healing, with the healing process. Was it actually the doing it, or was it the knowing, like your dad saying she's going to do it and like instilling that in there? Was it a little bit of both? Like maybe it was both.
I think it was a little bit of both. So my dad saying like, why wouldn't you go do this? I had done at that point, I had done debate for 3 years. I just returned from the state debate tournament. I was a decent debater. It's an identity thing too. Like I was a part of the debate team. I really enjoyed it. I'm of the very small population of people in this world that really love to be in front of an audience, and I love speaking, and debate was a place where I could do that critical thinking and have these really cool conversations and actually engage in those debates. And I love that. And that also led to I'm a speaker, and I'm now a professional speaker and a leader in a couple of industries. And so that's kind of leads to that, but that's just kind of part of my personality. But when I went back to it, when I went back to it, I didn't do it. I didn't go back to it because it was like, this will be good for my recovery. I went back to it because it's just what I did. And it's what I felt comfortable doing. And I had friends in it. And so that was a big piece of it too. It's like, I was a band kid too. And I was on the debate team, and I did youth legislature. So I was not a real athlete, even though I'm 6 feet tall and I maybe look like an athlete, but I went back to those things that were very comfortable for me. Yeah. And that was debate, and that was youth legislature, and that was the speaking, because that's where I felt comfortable my senior year. And then I felt such an attachment to it that I wanted to continue it in college because I didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I wanted to be a lawyer. That was kind of where I was going first, like that, because I was in the debate. Again, you hang out with debaters, you're going to get people that want to be lawyers. Sure. But that was what I went to school for. I was like, well, why wouldn't I debate in college? So I ended up looking for colleges to go debate, to be on the debate team. And, I'm from small town Idaho. And then the program that I felt very comfortable with, and the director is actually still there today. His name is Brent Northup. Wow. Him and I have been coaching the debate teams consecutively for quite a few years. But I went to that debate team, and it was a tremendous experience for a few reasons. First of all, I was not like the top debater. I was the good middle of the road debater, but I was around all of these amazing speakers and like national champions. And, Carroll College in Helena, Montana still does have an amazing debate program, but the people that were in my class were just incredible. And
Yeah.
being around that was an influence for me because I was around greatness. And, I practiced every day and I hung out with these people every single day. And again, it was part of my identity, but it was also becomes even more entrenched when you get into college. And,
Yeah.
And we traveled, we were together all the time. We traveled across the country together, and we debated in Colorado at the Air Force Academy. It was my first college debate tournament, which was
Wow.
amazing to be on that campus and to be around all of
That
these
is-
huge schools. It was just
yeah.
like,
Wow.
my eyes were wide open, but also I was debating against the top teams in the country, and I didn't win all the time, but man, I learned a lot, and I had to learn a lot and practice. And in hindsight, that was part of what I did. And I was with my friends, and, we were successful as a team. We were national champions my senior year, which is a pretty amazing
Wow.
feat,
That's
too.
awesome.
It was all of us together. We had won enough tournaments and what have you throughout the whole year that we were national champions that year.
That's awesome.
And a small school in Montana compete against like Berkeley and,
Wow.
Colorado State University and,
Yeah.
Claremont College, all these huge colleges. It was a big deal. But, in hindsight, what helped me, and this really came up, 27 years later, 30 or 20 years later, when I was writing the book, I
Yeah.
really do feel that, yes, I participated in that. No, I was not the top person on the team, but being a part of that and exercising my brain in that way,
Yeah.
I feel was a significant part of my recovery, because of the way that your brain works when you debate.
Yeah.
When you debate, you not only, it's so fast and it's so active and dynamic and it's so responsive, because you're not only listening to the speaker, but you're writing it down, and then you're writing your speech and your responses, and then you have to get up and speak right after them. Then you have to answer questions when they answer. So it's like constantly moving in this dynamic environment. Things are just like active, critical thinking for an hour. I mean, it goes so fast. Working with a teammate too, so there's just a lot going on, and I do really feel that was a significant part of my recovery. And
Right.
it would be interesting, and of course you can't do a comparative study, but like if I hadn't done that,
Yeah.
what would it be like? So,
well, because you're using, I mean, with debate, with everything you just described, I mean, you're really using both sides of your brain for that, which I think is the key. That's probably a big step in why you recovered so well, because you were exercising both sides of your brain with the debate and with, and with music too, by the way. That's a very, I'm a band kid too, so I totally get it. You use both, you're reading the music, you're doing the thing, and maybe if you're marching band, that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
So you're doing, that was huge, I'm sure. So
yeah. And it was a place where I felt comfortable and a place that I really enjoyed. So that influenced my first career in academia, right? I wanted to teach it. I loved speaking. I liked the material. I liked the topic. So that's what I studied. I've been a professor of business communication for 18 years now. I have since left the university, and now I'm focusing entirely on my business consulting, because that transition happened too. But it's that was a big piece of it. Was like, I am dedicated to this activity. It's something I love. It's something that transformed me, and I wanted to give back. And now I want to do that in businesses and help other CEOs refine their communication strategies and become better executive leaders and better communicators and better influencers.
Yeah.
And a lot of those qualities come from what I practice on the debate team. And so I truly do feel that it was a part of my recovery and preparation for entrepreneurship. So
100%. And I love that there's so many people, endless numbers of people that have been on the show that are doing that have done. This is a very familiar story that I hear. It gets me excited every time I hear it. And the story is, yes, this happened, and now I'm recovering, or I've recovered, or I'm, there's like those two steps. But then the important thing is, what do you do then? It's like you could retreat back into yourself, or you could feel sorry for yourself, or you could say, oh, I'm sick, whatever, or you could choose to help other people. And so many people that I've been so blessed to see, so many people on this show that have chosen the latter, and they want to help people, and you're just rocking it in that way. I mean, I'm so thankful that that's where we saw each other the first time, as you were speaking, and so I just, there's so many things that you're doing that are just so awesome. And so I feel let's dive into that a little bit. I mean, your book, you mentioned your book in passing, you mentioned your consult. Let's dive into that a little bit. I imagine you have a copy of your book there.
I do. It is right
somewhere.
It's called I See Your Genius, Transform Your Idea into Income.
Nice.
I can give you the QR code for that too. You can find it on Amazon. Published a year and a half ago, but it was a challenge to write, but just to recreate the brain injury and the recovery from that. But then also I was in the middle of my kind of middle of my entrepreneurship journey, and I've been teaching communication for 18 years or 16 years at the time I wrote the book, and been teaching debate and persuasion and influence, and teaching all those things, and everything that I teach in all communication. I think it falls under the strategy of brand, right?
Yeah.
Because your brand is who you are, and and how you speak to your audience, and how you transform your audience. And those three fundamental questions are the things that are part of your brand. And that's really where as I was in the entrepreneurship journey and like further defining what I do, I noticed a lot of similarities in the recovery from the brain injury and actually launching a business about it. And it has everything to do with connecting with you and your internal genius, your foundational understanding and worldview, and how you can use that and live in your genius zone and influence others to do the same thing. Because when you have a solution for someone, that's what business is all about, is solving a problem. And if you can solve a problem and you can teach other people how to solve that problem. So I help people become teachers and trainers too, because that's the way I think. It's the way I organize information. I can talk to people and help them develop their side hustles, their consulting business, what have you, and make a bigger influence on their audience. And I found that in the recovery, which is, connecting with your internal understanding and knowing who you are and living in your genius zone is a way to do that. And we should do that as entrepreneurs too. So that's kind of what the book is about the journey, that journey of both of them. And then I talk about kind of the process that I work with clients, and I work with coaches and consultants to refine their strategy. But I also work with larger businesses to be able to make sure that their brand is consistent in all areas of their business and their communication. And so that's the brand strategy, is kind of the comprehensive thing about what I do. I have a lot of business partnerships in the publishing industry, in the business growth industry. The Strategic Advisor Board is what I'm a part of. We've partnered with Achieve. So partnerships are the way to go. So also talk to me about debate, right?
Right. That Strategic Alliance Board is pretty phenomenal. There's hopefully there's two other people that from that Strategic Alliance Board that are going to be upcoming guests as well. So this is, I'm so excited to get a couple with Ryan and Jason and a couple different, and so we're working on that. But yeah, it's such a cool thing that you guys are doing with that. And
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Who knew that was even possible, and then all of a sudden it's like, here's all these people that are just here to help businesses, so
here to help businesses, and we have strikingly similar backgrounds. So
right. Yeah. I mean, speaking of similar backgrounds, I mean, three people on the board that I know of. I haven't met everybody, but 3 out of the 10 are going to be on this show because they have some sort of invisible condition. I'm not going to spoil it. You get to
Right.
find out when you watch the show, who it is and what the deal is. But it's amazing how many people's stories are so similar in that respect. So
Right.
it's so cool. So all right, well, so the book is obviously successful. Is it bestseller? Is it? I don't remember if you said that. Okay.
It is an Amazon bestseller, and then I also it's kind of a business card. It's because
Oh, sure.
it's what I do. It's my story, and
Yeah.
it speaks about how important your brand is, and so you get my background and my story, and then my entrepreneurship journey, and then how I help clients and how I help
Yeah.
businesses have a bigger impact and influence. So
Awesome.
it's and then I have published many books also with the Strategic Advisor Board and Chris O'Byrne and Jason
Yeah.
Miller, and we're trying to help businesses, and I think it's a very comfortable space for me to be, and it's a place where I can use my genius to influence others and help others capture their genius and influence others as well. So
Oh,
because the story is important, and I think, and as I wrote my story, that's when I started to discover the power in it. And because another thing about the brain injury too is that when I went to college, I didn't want people to really know about it. I was from a small town, and so everybody knew I was the kid with the head injury, and
Yeah.
everybody knew that, everybody knew my parents. And so everybody knew that I was like the kid with the head injury. And then they did a story about me in the Catholic paper, and that goes throughout all the state right before I went to college that year. And I didn't tell my debate coach at the time. I was like, I didn't want to tell them that I had a head injury the year before. And because it was just a year before when I was applying to go to college. And he found out because one of the kids on the team was from Jerome, Idaho, and they read the paper and they saw I was going to Carroll College on the debate team. And he's like, "Is this you?" I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really want to tell you what happened. So it wasn't something that and that was when I wrote about it 3 years ago now. And that was something that it was challenging because I had hidden it for so long and I didn't want to talk about it. But then as I worked with people and their brands and their stories, I understood what kind of power that has, and which inspired me to write the book, inspired me to become more succinct with what I do. And that was a big part of my journey and a big part of how I can help others in their
Well, it just makes your story all the more powerful, when you don't shy away from that, because that's a big deal, and you can relate. There are so many people out there. There's people now finding out, not as dramatic, not as obviously not as big of a brain injury, but there's people finding out now that 20 years ago that was a brain injury. Oh, okay, what do I do with that? So your story, having that in the forefront now is kind of cool, because it can help so many other people too. That it's like, oh, maybe I should approach things this way instead of that way. Just because it's a brain injury doesn't mean my life is over.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. It means that you just gotta move and pivot and figure out how to do it another way. So it's it's something to think about, but it's not something that I'm hiding from anymore.
No.
So coming on a podcast like this is really important because I get to tell the story, and being in this show is super important because I think telling the story is important, and I think people need to hear it. So
100%. Yeah. So, which is why I'm so thankful that you're here, because so many, I've had people on the show before that have had traumatic brain injuries and different things for many, many different reasons. And so everybody, because they're all so unique and so different and personal, that's why I did not hesitate to ask you to be here, and so glad that you did. So,
well, I appreciate that.
It's awesome. So, we've got about 5 minutes left before we're wrapping up. Do you have any amazing stories or anything from your consulting or from maybe somebody you met, or, with the brain injury thing that you could relate to, or I don't know, story time. What you got?
Story time. I think I think there, just talking about business and how and having confidence in business. I think as an entrepreneur, and I don't know, I think you can probably resonate with this story too. Like, it's hard, and it's hard to be able to find your niche and to find your audience and make sure you're communicating with your audience. And the lessons that were taught for me in debate are, yes, you've got, you have to find the solutions yourself and be able to write things down and speak and all that. But the other, I think, important lesson from that too is that you don't have to do it alone. And being on a team is something that's important. And after an injury like that, trusting yourself to do things is a real challenge, and that takes some time and therapy and whatever. But trusting yourself is the key to success. But you've also got to begin to trust others around you. And sometimes we get burned, which is challenging, but other times these incredible relationships develop, and the loyalty that comes out of that, I think, is so important. And that's one of the lessons that I've learned in the recovery from the brain injury, and also in an entrepreneurship journey. You've got to surround yourself with people that are doing the same things you are, and that are going to be well, why can't you do it? You've done it before, so it's like, to be my dad in my back of my mind, to be that way. And in the strategic advisory board in particular, and the other business partnerships I'm in that space, and I love being in that space. And I think it's so important to be able to do that. So trusting yourself is really important, but then also trusting others around you is equally important. Because you don't have to do it on your own. Right. We go to a doctor because they're a professional. It's, there are other professionals out there. Surround yourself with people that can help you, or that can inspire you to recover, to be better, to do whatever, that's like, hang out with people in the space that you want to be in. And I think that's a big lesson too. There's so many stories and I think that's probably one of the, I think in the entrepreneurship journey, we learn also from, you've got to look at your failures as a growth opportunity rather than a failure. Because I think of that resonates with like my recovery too. It's like, I couldn't walk right when I woke up from my coma, and I had, just come off a track team, not really good at track, but I was, I was still an athlete, and, but I couldn't even walk. And I think that we get some of that in business too, where we're like, start things and it's not as successful as we want it to be, but then we maybe lose our confidence, and you just gotta keep going. And I think that resilience and the hope and the opportunity that something's going to be better is what keeps us going. So I think there's those business lessons, and they're more life lessons too. So, well,
and I love that that's what you're doing, because it goes together, and that's, so, man. And so everybody, if you have not yet done this, take your phone right now and scan the QR code on the screen that's been there, because you want to talk to Shelby. You do. You really do. And so if you haven't yet, do it. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we got to go. But I hope that, I hope people heard your story and it sunk in, because it's a good one. It's an amazing story. So
thank you for having me.
Just thank you for being here. Yeah. I'm so glad that, nothing, I don't feel like anything's an accident. Seeing you at that conference, and then touching base and knowing and talking, and we've got more in common than I even realized the first time I talked to you. So it's crazy. So I'm so glad that we got to do this, and I'm thankful for your willingness to do it. And
of course. And thank you for giving back to the community for all that you're doing, because you have been there too, and know the challenges, and it's a extremely valuable thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you in just a couple minutes as we wrap up. And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, everybody. I love stories like that. This is so cool. This is fun. Not to mention I get to bring all of this amazing stuff to you, but I get to talk to all these amazing people. It's so fun. I love this. If you have a favorite episode, first of all, thank you for watching and knowing that that's your favorite episode. Share it out, share it on social media. Cause if it's your favorite episode, it's probably somebody else's too. Or if it's not yet, it might be. Maybe this is your new favorite episode. Share it. Let everybody know about it. And I so appreciate that. And join me Tuesday, April 23rd for our next show. And it's going to be a great one. And I appreciate everybody watching. And until April 23rd, have an amazing day, and we'll see you soon.